The tribal chief and the voice of the voiceless just came inches away from tearing each other apart backstage after Raw went off the air. And what you're about to hear is going to make your blood boil. Roman Reigns and CM Punk, two of the biggest egos in professional wrestling. Two men who've carried this company on their backs. Two absolute alphas who refused to back down from anyone. Just had a confrontation so intense that security had to physically separate them before fists started flying. This wasn't some worked angle for the cameras. This wasn't a scripted segment to build hype for a future match. This was real tension, real anger, and real hatred boiling over in a hallway where they thought nobody was watching. But someone was watching. Someone caught every single word, every threat, every moment of this explosive encounter. And now the entire wrestling world is buzzing about what this means for WWE going forward. If you're not subscribed to this channel yet, hit that button right now because we're diving deep into exactly what happened, why it happened, and what the absolutely insane consequences could be. Roman Reigns has been at the top of WWE for years now. He's the tribal chief, the head of the table, the man who's main evented more WrestleManias than most wrestlers will ever attend. His championship reigns have redefined what it means to be the face of this company. He's carried WWE through the pandemic, through empty arena shows, through every challenge thrown his way. Roman has earned his spot at the top through consistency, through evolution, through becoming the most complete performer in the industry. His confidence isn't arrogance, it's earned. His dominance isn't handed to him, it's taken. When Roman Reigns walks into a building, everyone knows who the real star is. CM Punk returned to WWE after a decade away from the company. His comeback shocked the wrestling world because nobody thought it would actually happen. The lawsuits, the burned bridges, the bitter departure, everything suggested Punk would never set foot in a WWE ring again. But he came back with something to prove, with unfinished business to handle, with a desire to show that he's still one of the best in the world. Punk's return brought legitimacy back to WWE programming. His matches have been excellent, his promos have been must-see television, and his presence has elevated everyone around him. Punk doesn't care about politics or playing corporate games. He speaks his mind, does things his way, and refuses to compromise his values for anyone. These two massive personalities were always going to collide, eventually. You can't have two alphas in the same locker room without tension developing. You can't have two men who both believe they're the most important person in the company without egos clashing. Roman sees himself as the foundation WWE is built on, the constant that's been there holding everything together. Punk sees himself as the game changer who walked away when things weren't right and came back on his own terms to make wrestling matter again. Both perspectives have validity, which makes the conflict even more complicated. The tension between them had been building for weeks. Little comments in interviews, subtle shots during promos, body language during backstage segments that suggested these two weren't exactly friendly behind the scenes. Roman mentioned in a podcast that some people think taking time off and coming back makes them special, an obvious reference to Punk's decade away. Punk responded in his own interview, saying some people confuse loyalty with lack of options. A clear shot at Roman's entire WWE career. The jabs were getting sharper, the subtext becoming text, and everyone watching knew an explosion was coming. Raw ended with both men in separate segments. Roman closed the show with his usual dominant presence, standing tall after dealing with whatever challenger WWE put in front of him that week. Punk had a segment earlier in the night that got huge reactions, proving once again that his connection with audiences hasn't diminished despite his time away. Both men headed backstage afterward, their nights seemingly finished, their work for the evening complete. Nobody expected what happened next. According to multiple sources who were present, Roman and Punk crossed paths in the hallway leading to the locker rooms. This wasn't the main backstage area where cameras are always rolling and dozens of people are constantly moving around. This was a side corridor, quieter, more isolated, the kind of place where real conversations happen away from prying eyes. Both men were walking with their respective groups. Roman had Paul Heyman and some members of his security detail. Punk was with a couple of producers who'd been working with him on his segments. The two groups approached each other from opposite ends of the hallway. In normal circumstances, one group might pause and let the other pass, or both would continue walking and exchange brief polite greetings as they passed. That's not what happened. Roman and Punk made eye contact from about 20 feet away, and neither man slowed down. Neither man moved to the side. Neither man showed any indication of yielding space to the other. They kept walking straight toward each other, like two freight trains on the same track heading for inevitable collision. When they reached each other, both men stopped. Face to face, inches apart, neither backing down. The tension was immediate and suffocating. Paul Heyman tried to step between them, tried to defuse whatever was building, but Roman put his hand up to stop Heyman from interfering. Punk's producers also tried to create some space, but Punk waved them off too. This was happening whether anyone else wanted it to or not. The hallway fell silent except for the sound of both men breathing heavily, staring each other down with pure intensity. Roman spoke first. His voice was low, controlled, but filled with barely contained anger. He told Punk that this was his company, his locker room, his era. He said Punk was a guest here, someone who ran away when things got tough and came crawling back when he needed WWE, more than WWE needed him. Roman said Punk could cut all the promos he wanted, could tell all the stories about the good old days. But none of that changed the fact that Roman was the one who stayed, who fought, who built WWE into what it is today. Every word was measured but dripping with disrespect. Punk didn't react immediately. He just stared at Roman with that expression he's perfected over the years. The one that says he's heard everything before and none of it impresses him. Then Punk smiled, which seemed to infuriate Roman even more. Punk responded by saying Roman didn't build anything, he was handed everything. Punk said Roman was chosen by the company, protected by the machine, given opportunity after opportunity until audiences had no choice but to accept him. Punk told Roman that when he himself was on top, it was because he forced WWE's hand, because audiences demanded it, because he was undeniable despite the company trying to hold him back. Roman's jaw clenched. You could see the anger rising in his eyes. He stepped even closer to Punk, their faces now just inches apart. Roman said that Punk's bitterness about not being chosen was pathetic. He said Punk's entire career was built on complaining about not getting opportunities, while Roman actually took advantage of every opportunity given to him. Roman told Punk that leaving for a decade and coming back doesn't make him special. It makes him someone who quit and now wants to pretend he's still relevant. Punk's smile disappeared. His expression turned cold and serious. He told Roman that he left because WWE wasn't worth his health or his dignity at the time, but at least he had the courage to make that choice. Punk said Roman has been WWE's puppet for so long that he's forgotten what having real control over his career feels like. Punk told Roman that everything about his tribal chief character, everything about his championship reigns, all of it was designed by committee and handed to him in a script. That's when Roman snapped. He shoved Punk backward, not hard enough to knock him down but enough to send a clear message. Punk immediately shoved Roman back with equal force. Both men's entourages jumped into action, trying to separate them before this escalated further. Paul Heyman was yelling for Roman to walk away. The producers were pulling Punk in the opposite direction, but both men were fighting against the people holding them back, trying to get at each other. Shouting over the chaos, Roman was yelling that Punk didn't belong here anymore, that his time had passed, that he should go back to whatever podcast studio would have him. Punk was yelling back that Roman was nothing without WWE protecting him, that he wouldn't last 5 minutes in a real fight, that his tough guy act was just that, an act. The insults were getting more personal, more vicious, more designed to hurt than just score points in an argument. This had gone way beyond professional rivalry into something much darker. More people started arriving as word spread that Roman and Punk were about to fight. Other wrestlers, road agents, backstage personnel, everyone was rushing to the scene. It took almost a dozen people to fully separate the two men and create enough distance that they couldn't immediately get at each other again. Even separated, both men were still shouting, still straining against the people holding them back, still trying to break free and finish what had started. WWE officials finally arrived and took control of the situation. They ordered both men to their separate locker rooms immediately. Roman was escorted one direction, Punk the other, both still glaring at each other over their shoulders as they were walked away. The hallway slowly cleared out as everyone processed what they'd just witnessed. This wasn't normal locker room tension. This was legitimate hatred between two of WWE's biggest stars, and it had nearly exploded into physical violence. The implications of this confrontation are massive for WWE. You can't have your top stars attacking each other backstage without consequences. WWE management is now facing a situation where they either need to turn this into a storyline and capitalize on the genuine heat, or they need to shut it down completely and keep these two separated. Neither option is simple. If they make it a storyline, how do you control two guys who clearly have real issues with each other? If they try to keep them apart, how do you prevent future incidents when they're both on the same roster? Roman Reigns isn't going anywhere. He's WWE's cornerstone, their most reliable main event star, the guy they've built the entire company around. His contract is long-term, his position is secure, and his value to WWE is incalculable. We will do whatever it takes to keep Roman happy and productive. CM Punk also isn't going anywhere by choice. He came back to WWE because he wanted to be here, because he has goals to accomplish, because there are matches he wants to have. His return has been hugely successful from every measurable standpoint. WWE benefits enormously from having him on the roster, so you have two immovable objects on a collision course. Two guys who both believe they're the most important person in the company. Two massive egos who refuse to back down. Two legitimate main event stars who apparently can't stand each other. WWE is sitting on a powder keg that could explode at any moment. The question isn't if these two will clash again, it's when and how badly. The locker room is now divided between people who support Roman and those who support Punk, creating factions and tensions that affect everyone. This confrontation also raises questions about the environment backstage in WWE. Is there proper leadership, keeping egos in check? Are there mechanisms in place to handle disputes before they escalate to shoving matches in hallways? Is WWE so focused on television content that they've neglected the actual management of talent relationships? A locker room where your two biggest stars nearly come to blows is a locker room that has serious cultural issues that need addressing. The wrestling world is already buzzing about this incident. Social media exploded once word got out about what happened. Fans are taking sides, debating who was right, who started it, who's more valuable to WWE. Some support Roman's perspective that he's earned his position through consistency and shouldn't have to justify himself to someone who left. Others support Punk's view that authenticity matters more than corporate approval. The debate is passionate, divisive, and exactly what makes wrestling compelling. When real emotions get involved, both men will face consequences for this confrontation. WWE can't let it slide without any response, or it sends a message that this behavior is acceptable. Fines seem certain. Mandatory meetings with management are probably already scheduled. There might be requirements that they avoid each other backstage, which is difficult when you're both on the same show. WWE might even use this as an opportunity to create the most anticipated match possible by turning this real heat into a storyline, where both guys get to settle their issues in the ring. The most interesting aspect of this entire situation is that both Roman and Punk have legitimate points. Roman has been WWE's foundation for years. He's delivered consistently, evolved his character, become a complete performer, and carried the company through incredibly difficult circumstances. His value cannot be questioned. But Punk also has a point that being chosen by management doesn't necessarily mean you're the best. It means you're the company's preference. Punk forced WWE to acknowledge him through sheer audience demand, despite the company initially preferring other options. That's a different kind of validation. What happens next will define WWE programming for months or potentially years. If these two end up in a program together, it will be the most must-see feud in wrestling because everyone knows there's real animosity fueling it. Every promo will feel genuine because they'll be saying things they actually believe. Every physical confrontation will have real intensity because they genuinely don't like each other. That's money that you cannot manufacture with scripted storylines alone. But it's also dangerous because real hatred can lead to legitimate injuries or incidents that go too far. The confrontation, after Raw revealed something everyone suspected but nobody could confirm until now. Roman Reigns and CM Punk have serious issues with each other that go beyond professional competition. These are two men who fundamentally disagree about what it means to be successful in WWE, who represent different philosophies about the wrestling business, who cannot coexist peacefully in the same space. WWE now has to figure out how to manage this situation before it spirals completely out of control. The tribal chief and the voice of the voiceless came inches from destroying each other in a backstage hallway, and the entire wrestling world is watching to see what happens when these two nuclear bombs finally detonate. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any updates on this explosive situation because this story is just beginning.